Hare Krishna, welcome to the live session from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Today we are going to continue from chapter 6, which we started yesterday, which was Dhyana Yoga, and we covered up to the verses 9. And today we are going to continue from there onwards. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Gurum Deen Dharinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Verse 10. Yogi yunjita satatat matmanam rahasi stitah ekakiyat chittatma nirashira parigraha. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Verse 11 and 12. Shuchau deshe paristhapeya sthiram asanam atmanah nati uchcharitam nati nicham chailajna kushottaram tatraikagram manah kritva yata chittendriya kriyah upavishya vishayasane yunjyat yogam atma vishuddhaye. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities and fixing the mind on one point. Verses 13 and 14. Samam Kai Shiro Grivam Dharayan Chalam Sthirah Samprekshya Nasikagram Swam Dishashchanavalokayan Prashantatma Vigat Bhir Brahmachari Vrate Stitah Manah Sanyamya Machitto Yukta Asita Matparah. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose, thus with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life. One should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Verse 15. Yunjan evam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah Shantim nirvana paramamat samstham adhigachati. Thus practicing constant control of the body, mind and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God for the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. Verse 16. Natya asanatastu yogo astina chaikantam Anash Nataha Nachati Swapna Shilasya Jagrato Naiva Charjuna. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjun, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Verse 19. Yukta hara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapna vabodhasya yogo bhavati dukhaha. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Yada viniyatam chittamat manye vavatishthate nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. When the yogi, by the practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. So yesterday Krishna was telling us all about mind control and how we can get above the dualities of physical limitations, of the mental limitations, and the egoistical limitations. So Krishna is telling us a very simple formula. Now it's up to us how we want to use that in order to come into devotional service. Verse 10, Krishna is saying that a transcendentalist or a practitioner of bhakti, they always engage their body, mind and the self, which is their soul, with the Supreme, and they should be living in a secluded place full of controlling, and they should be free from the feelings of possessiveness. In other words, attachments. I'm trying to get the deities. It's okay. You can see them in the distance. Anyway. So one has to do this, because unless one is in control of their physical, their mental and the self, and they are engaging actually these three in the service of Lord, they are not a transcendentalist. One is called transcendentalist when one is able to use all these faculties in relationship with God, in service of the God, of the Supreme. And that person, the transcendentalist is always in control of their mind. Prabhupada tells in the purport to us that indirectly, even the impersonalist who doesn't consider Bhagwan to be a person, they are also Krishna conscious in a way, because they are only bothered reaching up to the effulgence or the rays coming from the Lord's body. So indirectly they are also on the path of Krishna consciousness. But a directly Krishna conscious person who considers Bhagwan as a person, that person knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. Paramatma is the localized aspect of the God within our heart, and Brahman is the effulgence, the rays coming from the Bhagwan's body. Now that person's or that transcendentalist absolute knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect. Whereas the others, the impersonalist and the meditative kind of yogi, they are not in a perfect Krishna consciousness. But nevertheless, everybody is engaged in their own pursuit, in whichever form they worship the God. Because Bhagwan again tells us, has told us previously as well, that worshipping him in some or other form up to some or other level is still better than not worshipping him at all. That person is obviously not attached to anything. In verses 11 and 12, Krishna says that for practicing yoga, a person should be using a kusha grass mat and covering it with their skin and a soft cloth, and their seat should not be too high, too low, and then they should sit firmly and try to control their mind, their senses and activity by bringing the mind to one point. But this kind of control, even if one is able to achieve, is not going to be a lifelong control. It's only a temporary, a momentarily kind of control. Because in this yuga, it is very difficult for us. People are not that elevated. Their minds are always disturbed with one thing or another. There's so many anxieties troubling them. And the best remedy, Bhagwan says, for people of this age is chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is some kind of assurance for the people of Kali Yuga. Harer Nam, Harer Nam eva kevalam, kalau nasti eva gatir anyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. In verses 13 and 14, Bhagwan continues that now that person, they will have to hold their body, neck and head in one straight line, and they will have to steadily stare at the tip of the nose, and with a mind which is controlled of everything, of all kinds of sense gratification, and then only a person is able to meditate upon Bhagwan within the heart. The super soul aspect of the Bhagwan, this Paramatma aspect of the Bhagwan can be meditated upon, and they understand that Bhagwan is the ultimate goal of life. Rather, they make Bhagwan the ultimate goal of life. Now again, this needs a lot of control. The brahmacharis, they might be able to do this up to a certain extent because they will not be living in a household setup of life. But then again, they have got all the vows to follow, the vows of celibacy, and you know, earlier on the children are sent to Gurukul. In the past, that used to be the practice, and they were trained into becoming the brahmacharis. But now it's not done that way everywhere. So people just learn the normal yoga for the better health and some kind of breath control as well. But then they should understand that ultimately a householder, then when a brahmachari gets trained, that brahmachari can be accepted in the bhakti school. That brahmachari can be admitted into a householder's life, and that householder can also be like a brahmachari if they're living a regulated life and they're following the path of bhakti. They are they're following all the four regulations of eating, controlled diet, and living in a controlled, systematic way as householders, having control over their senses and not indulging in too many sense gratification activities, and having some kind of control and discipline, which we know one has to follow anyway, even if a person is for example, just aspiring to have a good health in their life, or they're aspiring to becoming something proficient in their chosen field of activity. So discipline is something which is needed in every walk of life. So nobody even achieved anything highly material unless they had inculcated the discipline in their lives. So ultimately, everything one aspires to become perfect in, to become disciplined in, is going to help them in the path of bhakti. Because for following the path of bhakti, one has to tread a lot of discipline. Tread on a path which has a lot of what should I say? One has to have a lot of steadfastness in their behavior, a lot of self-control, because this is a lifelong process. Just as a student who wants to achieve something in their academic life, they have to put effort day in and day out. And similarly, a person in a professional life or a person doing the business, or a scholarly, or an artistic, or somebody with an artistic bent, or in any field of life, you have to put a lot of effort to achieve. So bhakti is no different, but bhakti is a path which can be walked alongside the material life, because we all have to subsist ourselves by doing something or other in the life. We just can't sit idle. Our bodies, they also need to move about. This is how we have been designed. So the yoga system for a bhakta is little bit different than the yoga system which is just for the so-called yoga societies, Prabhupada says, which is very popular in the world outside. So until and unless you connect with the Bhagwan inside your heart, who is in the form of super soul, you wouldn't get the real happiness. In verse 15, Bhagwan is telling us that by the constant control of the practice of control of the body, mind, activities, the mystic transcendentalist regulates their minds. Now, then they attain the kingdom of the God or the abode of Krishna by bringing some kind of stop in their material activities. So the final goal is only reachable when the physical and mental faculties are in control of a person, and they're not overly attached to the material existence. They're not just endeavoring very hard to just achieve the material happiness. They've understood what is the permanent happiness and which bank account is going to go along with them even when this life ceases for them, when they continue into the next life. That is the only bank balance, the spiritual bank balance, the bhakti bank balance, which is going to roll over into next life. Okay. Yes, we have been talking about this, the Brahman, the Paramatma, the Bhagwan. So ultimate goal is to enter the eternal abode of Bhagwan in Golok Vrindavan and to serve him there. So the Shweta Swatara Upanishad 3.8 tells us, Tam eva vidhi vati mrityum eti. Sa vai manah Krishna padaravindayo. And then in the Shweta Swatara Upanishad it says, Tam eva vidhi vati mrityum eti. First was from the Vedas and second is from the this is from the Vedas, and it just tells us that one can overcome the path of birth and death only by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to befool innocent people. In verse 16, Bhagwan is telling that there is no possibility of one becoming a yogi, O Arjun, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little. Because our bodies have been designed for certain amount of rest and certain amount of fuel as well, the food. So we have to keep everything in a very regulated way. We have to eat regulated diet, and we have to have some rest as well. Only then we can become a yogi. So too much indulgence is not going to help us. We have to find out the right amount, the right balance between the rest and the work and the right amount of diet, and the right diet which is going to help us to do the bhakti as well. So the 4 regulations has been given by Prabhupada very nicely to us if we follow them. it becomes easy because we'll be starting to live our lives in mode of goodness, and once we are in the mode of goodness, it gets easier for us to follow scriptures. And the scripture, the one which we are reading at the time, Bhagavad Gita as it is, also tells us what foods, what grains, vegetables, fruits and milks, they are in the mode of goodness, and the people who will be indulging in drinking, smoking, animal food, and the food which is not first offered to Krishna will be making them suffer the sinful reactions only. And they will, Prabhupada says that, Bunjate te eva agham papa ye pachanti atma karanat. Anyone who eats for sense pleasure or cooks for himself, not offering his food to Krishna, eats only sin. And we don't want that after reading so many instructions and learning from the purports of Prabhupada. So too much fasting, too much practice of yoga for the body is not going to help either. So we have to find the middle path, the right path advised by the Shastras. Because too much sleep is only going to bring laziness, and that person is also not going to be able to perform yoga, not just the yoga of the body, but the yoga of getting one with the serving the Lord. In verse 17, it's told that regulated diet, regulated eating habits, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all kinds of material pains. Practicing the yoga system, so extravagance has to be avoided. Prabhupada says, reminds us in the purports, we should aim to take and accept the prasad only, and subsist ourselves on the food which are in the mode of goodness. Further in Bhagavad Gita 9.26, we'll be reading more about these in verse 26, chapter 9. And when a person becomes Krishna consciousness, they don't want to waste even a moment of their life without being engaged in the service of Lord. Because they understand that when a day passes, they are losing so many hours of their life altogether, which is not going to come back, which is not going to rewind. Prabhupada tells us about Rupa Goswami, who was always engaged in Krishna service and who would only sleep like 2 hours a day, which is not advice for us at all. And there was Thakur Haridas, who would accept nothing but prasad, and he wouldn't even sleep for a moment without finishing his daily routine of chanting. So we've had so elevated lineage, and the previous acharyas have really put the benchmark very high for us. And Thakur Haridas Thakur used to chant 300,000 names daily, not yearly, daily. So sense gratification is out of question for such persons, and becoming regulated in diet, in rest, in speech, in wakefulness, in everything, material misery will also go away for such people. And finally in verse 18, it is said that yogi, by the practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence. He becomes starts to see above his mind. He is devoid of all material desires. This person is said to be well established in the yoga of Bhakti of Bhagwan. Example is of King Ambrish. He was a king, but still he was always serving the Lord. His mind was always on the lotus feet of Lord. In doing all his duties, he was engaging his mind. He was using his hands in mopping the temples of the Lord, his ears in hearing the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental forms of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees. his sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flower, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, his legs in going to the places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord, and his head in offering obeisances to the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. So King Amrish gives us beautiful example, and when we do the arti, we all offer all these 5 articles, and we engage our 5 senses also in the service of the Lord that way. The transcendental stage may be inexpressible, Prabhupada says, subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path. But when we start the practice of the Bhakti Yoga, slowly by following the regulative principles, slowly as it's been described for Maharaj Ambrish, we will be able to employ our senses into the service of lotus feet of Lord. And until you will train your mind in doing such service, the bhakti is not going to be kind of taking off either. And this is Archana of the Lord, or the service of the Lord. When we are smelling the incense, offering the incense, taking the air offered, and then the fragrance and the prasad, we're using our sense of taste, hearing incense, in the hearing the katha and the chanting, and when we offer the chamar of the fan, peacock fan, we're giving all the 5 articles, offering all the articles which Bhagwan has given to us, the air, the earth, the food, everything, water, we offer it back to, and the fire in the form of lamp, we offer it back to God first, then we take the remnant of it, the prasad of it. So engaging the sense and mind, as Prabhupada has described in the purport, this is the perfect process for transcendental achievement. This is called yukta, or combined. Yukta is, the meaning of yukta in Sanskrit is, is regulated. So it has to be regulated. Then only bhakti, the process of bhakti will become doable, and it will become our second habit. So mind has to be regulated first of all. Thank you for joining for this session, and we'll continue again next time. I wish you all a very happy Karwa Chauth, to all the ladies who are going to observe tomorrow. And please engage yourself in the worship of Lord Damodar. Today is the 4th day of Lord Damodar, and hear the Damodarashtakam, and you can even hear the Gopi Geets. In India, the times are after at 7:30 in the evening. Damodarashtakam comes every day. Different Damodarashtakams from different temples are shown, and then afterwards Gopi Geets follow. They are the songs sung by the gopis in separation of Bhagwan, and gopis are the highest of the devotees of the Lord. So after the ghee lamps, of course, and whatever you're doing, keep doing that as a vrata throughout the month. You don't have to go over the board. Whatever is comfortable for you to offer as bhakti to Bhagwan. So thank you once again for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.